Helped authorities make their case. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Samantha Edwards.
And I'm Chris Fischini. Gerard Pepin, who's a substance abuse counselor in Florida, was arrested last week. Pepin, who was also a counselor here in Maine for several years, facing 2 counts of sexual battery and 1 count of sexual misconduct by a psychotherapist. There are 2 women here in Maine who were both married to Pepin at different times. They worry there may be more victims here, and that's why they say they're speaking out right now.
Well, actually, he swept me off my feet. He was like a Prince Charming. He was too good to be true, as all my friends had said. He proposed on bended knee.
That was the Gerard Pepin Deborah Jones says she moved to Florida for and married, not the man in this jail mugshot. Deborah says she vividly remembers that day it all came crashing down at their Port Orange home.
On May 14th, 2011, he come home after working a morning and was white as a ghost and said to me, "I'm in lots of trouble."
He was under investigation for charges he forced a client of his at the Salvation Army to perform a sexual act on him, a woman he was supposed to be helping with drug addiction. According to court documents, he threatened to turn in a sex letter she wrote and get her sent back to jail if she didn't do what he wanted.
And he told me the crime that he had been accused of, and I asked him if it did happen, and he said yes. I thought I was going to fall down.
Deb says they separated and she moved back to Maine shortly afterward. But all the while, she was talking to investigators and keeping in touch with Gerard. What she was doing, she says, was helping them try and get a taped confession, something she says took more than a year and a half.
Well, I basically had to tell him lots of things he wanted to hear and make him think I was on his side. And be very understanding, and so I got him to confess to everything that happened.
About 3 years after the investigation began on June 12, 2014, Pepin was arrested. That's when Deb says she reached out to Charlene Beecham, Pepin's second wife, to tell her what happened.
I could not, and still find it so difficult to rationalize like these 2 different men that were in this body. I never would have thought that he was capable of doing anything like that.
Charlene Beecham just filed the paperwork to legally change her name from Pepin back to Beecham. She says they were married for about 4 years and she worked with him at his Bangor office. She says at the time she never saw any problems, but in hindsight she wonders if there were things she missed.
It makes me totally disgusted to think that he was a person who worked with people who were victimized at some point. Anybody who's in counseling for substance abuse or mental health issues most likely has been victimized by somebody in the past.
In court documents, Pepin denies the charges in Florida and has no criminal charges that we could find in Maine. But he did lose his license to be an alcohol and drug counselor in 2005 for failing to comply with a consent agreement. In that consent agreement, he was formally reprimanded for being engaged in, quote, multiple dual relationships with a client, including hiring her to work as a secretary. Charlene says that secretary was a young woman that he hired after they got divorced and she left the office. She doesn't know if anything more went on, but she hopes that if there were others who may have been victimized, that they'll come forward.
I want them to know that you can come forward now because we all know the truth now.
And that's what Deb Jones wants too, and for those who may question her motives, she has this to say.
I work in the mental health field, and I am a mandated reporter to report any type of abuse, neglect that somebody does to someone else or they do to themselves. And so I take that code of ethic very strongly, and I could not lay down my head at night knowing that I knew that he was hurting people and I didn't do anything.
Now, Deb Jones also readily admitted that 75% of her is doing this because she wants justice for any possible victims, but she did say about 25% is because she does want revenge for the emotional and financial strain he caused her. She did also disclose that she's writing a book about her ordeal, about going from a wife to a police informant. We did attempt to reach Gerard Pepin at Volusia County Jail today, but were unsuccessful.